Welcome to Midnight Hunt, where shadows whisper, and the night hides its darkest secrets. Every story here will pull you deeper into the unknown. Turn off the lights and let the hunt begin. I remember the house before everything else. Not because it was pretty or new, but because it smelled like old wood and lemon oil, like someone had tried to clean time itself and only managed to shine the dust. We moved in the summer I was 8. It sat on a quiet street, where kids left their bikes in the grass and neighbors waved from their porches. From the outside it looked harmless enough. Inside it held rooms that folded into each other, a narrow staircase that moaned when you stepped on the second stair, and a tiny attic window where a strip of light always landed just above the toy chest. At the time, the house felt like the whole world to me. My mom worked in the mornings, my little sister spent her afternoons drawing princesses, and I learned every corner by heart. Where the sunlight hit the floor in the late afternoon, which floorboard squeaked if you walked without socks, which drawer stuck unless you pulled it at a certain angle. The routine made everything safe. We ate cereal together, argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash, laughed about small things. It was, on the surface, ordinary. The first thing that felt wrong was small enough I almost told myself I imagined it. I was lying in bed one night, my blanket pulled up to my chin, staring at the glow. In the dark stars stuck to the ceiling like a cheap constellation. Outside, branches scratched at the window, and the streetlight slipped through the curtains in a slow, lazy wash. I watched the shadows dance on the wall and told myself it was just the trees. But there was a shadow in the corner that did not move with the branches. It sat near the toy chest, low to the ground, and when I blinked it vanished like someone had erased it with their thumb. I remember that kind of cold, not the kind that comes from a draft, but the cold that slides through you from the inside. My fingers felt numb. I pulled the blanket up over my head and pretended the stars on the ceiling were planets far away. When I woke up in the morning, the toy chest was open. I never left it open. My mom would lose her mind, toys everywhere. Little plastic armies toppled across the floor. I closed it and told myself I must have done it when I was half asleep. I told myself a lot of things that week. A few weeks later, my sister, who was 5 and fearless until bedtime, told our mom she didn't like the man in the closet. She said it so easily, as if she were telling us she preferred apples over oranges. My mom laughed at first. Kids imagine things when they're tired, she said, stroking my sister's hair. My sister looked at her and said, "He stands there. He whispers sometimes." The way she said it made me stop breathing for a moment. It wasn't dramatic or rehearsed. There was no show in it. There was only a tiny honest fear. That same night, very late, I woke to the sound of something dragging across the floor. Soft at first, like someone brushing their nails over wood, then deliberate, a slow scrape that moved toward my bed and stopped. I lay there, frozen, gripping the blanket so hard my knuckles hurt. The sound stopped directly beside my bed. I could not make out a shape. I could only feel the pressure of being watched. When morning came, I found long, fresh scratches on the floorboards beside my bed. Parallel lines gouged into the wood as if someone had dragged something sharp along it. I ran to my mom. She frowned and accused me of playing with a toy or dragging a chair. I told her I hadn't. She told me not to lie and then walked away. Her voice had that softness adults use when they are trying to keep their patience from breaking. After she left, I sat on the floor and pressed my fingers into the grooves. They were cold. The nights after that got small and mean in ways that are hard to explain. I would hear a whisper in the hallway and lay there waiting for the sound to make sense. It never did. Sometimes the whispers came like radio static, low and indecipherable, as if several people were speaking behind thin walls. Once I woke because my sister cried in her room. I ran in and she pointed to the corner with a little finger and said, "He's there." Not screamed, not frantic. Just a 5-year-old stating a fact. The hair on my arm stood up so quickly it felt like static. We asked our mom to look in the closet. She said a prayer. She lit a candle and walked the house with it, murmuring words I could not hear clearly. She never opened the closet all the way. We all heard the prayer, but none of us were allowed to look when she did it. Maybe she thought if she spoke the right words, the quiet would respect that. Maybe she wanted to pretend what we were feeling wasn't real. The rest of the family kept doing the things families do: meals, helping with homework, trips to the grocery store. Life blurred forward in that weird way pain and fear do. You keep breathing, but you are always waiting for the next thing. The scariest small thing came the night the hallway light went out. My mom always left a dim lamp on for us. On that night the lamp clicked off, the glow snuffed like someone had pinched it. I told myself the bulb died. I told myself a lot of things. Then I heard footsteps down the hall, heavy and slow. They stopped outside my door. The door creaked open just a fraction and a tall, dark shape leaned in, only its head visible, leaning in like someone checking on a sleeping child. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep because my voice wouldn't work. When I opened them, the door was closed and I was alone. The hallway smelled like wet leaves. My mom and sister and I talked about it in the morning like sensible people. My mom said she had been asleep. She seemed tired, and there was that little crease between her eyes like worry had finally found her. Later that week, I came home alone from school. The house was empty and quiet. As I sat on the couch doing my math homework, I heard the toy chest slam shut in my room. I froze. I went to check and the door to my room was wide open. The toy chest was closed, but my toys were strewn across the floor like someone had emptied it in a hurry. I stood at the doorway and did not step inside. I felt like a trespasser in my own house. I waited on the couch until my mom came home. When she saw the toys, she laughed at first and said the cat must have done it. We did not have a cat. Her laugh was a reflex she used that day to avoid saying, "I don't know." I wanted to tell her about the rows of invisible eyes I thought I sometimes felt in the corners, but words felt too small. I slept badly after that. I kept washing the image of the corner in my head. The way a shadow could sit, patient and steady, like someone who has been waiting for a long time and knows how to be still. It was the kind of fear that stretches into your daytime. It changed how I moved around my room. I stopped standing with my back to corners. I stopped going down the hall at night without shouting for someone. My little sister stopped sleeping in her bed for a while. She started slipping into my parents' room and curled up between them like a folded paper bird. And then one autumn morning, not long before we moved, my mom told me something that did not fit with the woman who had laughed at us. We were making toast in the kitchen, and she let a silence sit between us for a second I had never heard before. She looked up from the toaster and said quietly, "Sometimes I wake up and see a shadow standing in the doorway. I never told you because I didn't want to make it real." Her hands trembled a little when she said it. That was the night none of us could call this imaginary anymore. We lived together in the same house, and each of us had something the others had seen. The ordinary had shifted. We left that house when I was 10. My mom remarried and we moved into a bigger place. I told myself leaving meant leaving the watching behind. For a while it felt like that might be true. But I carried the sound of scraping wood with me, like a nail dragged along the inside of my skull, and sometimes at night I still woke to the memory of a shadow that would not move. We thought things would settle, that maybe our imaginations had stretched too far. But the house didn't care about what we thought. It didn't need us to believe. It only needed us to stay. At first, it came as little intrusions. The sound of footsteps on the stairs when everyone was accounted for in the kitchen. Doors that opened just enough to let the hallway shadow spill inside. A mirror in the upstairs bathroom that fogged over even when no one had run the water. My mom began to leave the radio on at night, low static filling the silence. She said it made her sleep easier. I knew she was trying to drown something out. One night I woke to my sister crying again. I ran to her room and found her sitting on the edge of the bed, knees to her chest. Her face was pale in the moonlight. She pointed to the corner. He was standing there, watching. He doesn't blink. I flicked on the lamp, heart pounding, but there was nothing except her drawings scattered on the floor. Crayon sketches of houses, stick figures, and something else. A dark shape with two white circles for eyes. When I showed my mom, she pressed her lips together and took the paper from me. She folded it once, then twice, then slid it into the trash. Don't encourage her. Kids make things up. But her hand shook as she turned away. A week later, I had my own proof. I was brushing my teeth in the upstairs bathroom when the light flickered. For a second, the mirror didn't show me. It showed a figure standing just behind me, tall and too close. I spun around, my toothbrush clattering to the sink. The bathroom was empty. But the smell hit me. Damp earth. Like the woods outside after rain. I yelled for my dad. He came storming in, his tie loosened from work. "For God's sake, enough already!" "This house is old. It makes noises. You're letting your heads get filled with nonsense." I tried to argue, but his voice cut sharp and final. He needed the world to stay rational, even if it wasn't. But the house wouldn't stay silent. It had learned our rhythms. Every night, when the hallway lamp went off, the whispers started. They weren't random anymore. They formed shapes, syllables just out of reach. I pressed my ear to the door once, trying to catch the words. It felt like 100 voices murmuring secrets all at once. The air was so cold against the doorframe that my breath fogged. I never tried that again. Even my mom couldn't pretend anymore. One morning, she came down to breakfast pale as chalk. Mom saw someone was breathing in my room last night, right by my ear, and my dad didn't look up from his coffee. He just muttered, "You were dreaming." But I saw the way her hands trembled on the mug. She wasn't dreaming. The worst came one stormy evening. The power flickered out and we lit candles around the living room. My sister curled up beside me, clutching her stuffed rabbit so tight I thought the seams might tear. We tried to play a board game, but none of us were really paying attention. The house was too loud, groaning, sighing, almost humming under the storm. That's when the front door creaked open, slowly inch by inch, as if someone were pushing it from the outside. My dad jumped up with a flashlight, marched to the doorway, and swung it open. Nothing. Just the rain sweeping across the porch. He shut it, muttering curses under his breath. But as he sat back down, my sister pointed at the staircase. "He's there." I followed her finger. At the top of the stairs, just barely lit by the candlelight, was a shadow that didn't belong. It was taller than any of us, and its head tilted slightly, as though curious. My stomach dropped. When I blinked, it was gone. My dad swore we were imagining it, but he didn't sleep in his bed that night. He stayed on the couch with the flashlight clutched in his hand. From that point, things escalated fast. Objects moved. Plates rattled in the cabinets without being touched. I woke one morning to find every toy I owned lying neatly against the wall, facing my bed like an audience. My sister found her dolls twisted, their faces turned backward. I tried to confide in a friend at school, but the words felt ridiculous once I said them out loud. He laughed nervously, then stopped when he saw I wasn't smiling. After that, he didn't come over anymore. At home, it became harder to tell what was normal and what wasn't. The house had a rhythm, and if you listened closely, you could almost hear it breathing. Walls expanding, floors creaking in a steady pulse. I began to wonder if we hadn't moved into a house at all. Maybe we had moved into something alive, something that had been waiting for a family like ours. And then came the night that proved it beyond doubt. The night it all broke open was colder than the rest. The kind of cold that pressed into your skin and stayed there. The storm had passed, but the air inside the house felt heavier than outside. My sister and I sat on the living room rug, drawing half-heartedly under the yellow light of a lamp. My mom was folding laundry, my dad buried in a newspaper he wasn't really reading. The silence was thick, almost expectant. Then the lamp went out. Not a flicker, not a fade, just gone. Darkness swallowed the room, and for a moment, the only sound was the quickening of our breath. My dad cursed, fumbling for the flashlight he always kept nearby. Before he could switch it on, a deep groan rose from the walls. It was the sound of wood bending under a weight it shouldn't have to hold. The floor trembled beneath us, a shudder that rattled picture frames and knocked a stack of folded towels to the ground. My sister screamed. My mom grabbed her and whispered a prayer through clenched teeth, and then the voices began. Clearer than ever. No longer whispers, no longer static. Dozens of them layered, rising from the floorboards and the ceiling, speaking words in a language I didn't recognize. My skin prickled as if ants crawled beneath it. "Stop it! Leave us alone!" His voice cracked. It was the first time I had ever heard him afraid. The flashlight snapped on, the beam cutting through the dark. He swept it across the room, and froze. At the base of the staircase stood a figure. Tall, faceless, its outline shifting like smoke caught in place. Its head tilted just like before, watching us. The light trembled in my dad's shaking hands. "That's him, that's the man." The figure stepped forward. The boards creaked under its weight, but its feet made no sound. The air dropped 10 degrees in a heartbeat. My breath puffed out in little clouds. I grabbed my mom's arm, my nails digging into her skin. She didn't pull away. Her eyes were fixed on the figure, wide and glassy. The house itself seemed to respond. Doors slammed upstairs. Windows rattled in their frames. The walls groaned louder and louder until it felt like the entire structure was bending in on itself. The voices grew deafening, a chorus of anger, grief, hunger. I couldn't tell. And then everything stopped. Silence. Stillness. The figure was gone. The house seemed to exhale as if satisfied. We sat there in the dark, the flashlight beam shaking across the walls. No one spoke. What could we say? The days that followed blurred. My dad refused to talk about that night. My mom prayed more often, leaving candles lit in every room. My sister wouldn't go upstairs at all. And I started to feel like the house had marked us, like it had pulled something out of us that we could never get back. A month later, we moved. My parents never explained, never admitted. But I saw the relief in their eyes the day we drove away. None of us looked back at the house. It stood there at the end of the street, tall and still, as if watching us leave. Even now, years later, I dream about it. In the dream, I'm back in my old bedroom. The toy chest is open. The shadow waits in the corner, patient as ever. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. And when I wake, my room feels wrong. Too cold, too dark. As if the house followed me, tucked itself into my bones. Because the truth is, we never escaped it. We carried it with us. Some houses don't just watch their families. Some houses claim them piece by piece and never let go. You've been hunting the midnight with us, but the night never ends. Subscribe to Midnight Hunt for more chilling tales, and remember, darkness is always closer than you think. Until the next hunt,